Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon joins me, and we're going to talk about the best, most fun surprises in the NBA this season. This is a fun episode. After last time out, we did the power tankings of teams that have not been very fun this year. We're going to talk about the teams that we've enjoyed watching and have been surprised by this year. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. What's going on, Bryce?
What's up, Sam? How are you? Some quick shout outs here as we're getting into postseason play at multiple levels, not the NBA, of course, but my high school team my original high school team where I played high school is playing right now in the state tournament. So shout out them. Hopefully they pull out a win. The school I teach at and coach football at, used to coach basketball, goes to the first round tomorrow. And then the American University Eagles play tonight for the Patriot League Championship to punch their ticket to March Madness. So some quick shout outs there for some programs that I've been a part of, was a part of, etc.
I love it so much that you're just shouting out these little area schools. Shout out to American, baby. Shout out David Aldridge.
Yeah, DA's the man. Yes, him and Kermit, famous American U alum. It's funny. I had somebody reach out via the Substack that has been a listener of Game Theory and didn't know that I had played at American until last episode, and so they reached out to me on the Substack. I won't hurt their identity, not hurt their, but I won't sell their identity out here, but yeah, somebody around the program, around the university reached out and was like, hey, I didn't know you went to AU. And so hopefully we'll connect sometime next week as they're preparing for the NCAA tournament and playing in March Madness. So always cool how those connections are made.
I love it so much. I went out to the NBL finals last night.
Yeah, good game, yes.
Every single time I go to these NBL games, it's the last 3 games I've been to. The first 2, Chris Golding has hit at least 10 threes. In like the first game and second game I've recently gone to, and they were both against Perth. Like Golding is just insane. He's one of the best shooters on planet Earth. I love watching that guy play. He's like 36 years old, and okay, so he like flops all over the court, and that's a reality that we deal with, but he is one of the most impressive basketball players to shoot the ball anywhere off of movement in any level, at any level of basketball. And then last night I got to see Tyler Harvey just drill a 3 with he drilled a 3 down 1 with 6 seconds left. That was like contested and insane. Shout out former Orlando Magic legend Tyler Harvey, who's made a killing and made a name for himself out here in Australia. So yeah, I love the NBL. I'm sure we'll talk about it again next week when I go to the NBL game again on Wednesday. Today's episode though is the best surprises in the NBA. The most fun surprises in the NBA. There's just going to be a lot of enjoyable stuff we're going to talk about here. It's a lot of stuff I feel like we've talked about throughout the season, but sure, I wanted to kind of get it all in one spot of the things that I've just enjoyed and loved watching this season. And I think I want to let you go first because I think our number one surprise is probably the same, in all honesty. And I want to give you the floor. We each picked 3, but I ended up picking 4 just because I was worried that Bryce would overlap with the specific one that I'm talking about. So Bryce, go for it. I'm sure you're going to talk about the Detroit Pistons here.
Yeah, so I obviously had them on my list. I have my list of, teams and then individual players that have been surprised or enjoyed or, whatever it is. This team, man, I know Shaq doesn't think they're fun to watch, but Shaq also doesn't know who head coaches the Detroit Pistons. So I will say that Shaq is wrong about the Detroit Pistons. As somebody that has watched every second of the last 5 years, I feel like maybe I have a little bit of a perspective on this. 8 games over 500 as it sits here today, Sam. Cade Cunningham is second team All-NBA. Whether that means he's a top 10 player or not, that's not what we're debating. This season in 24-25, All-NBA, he's going to be second team. In my opinion, that's where he belongs. He's been incredible. I just did a breakdown over on the Substack. If you guys are going to go and check it out, it is against the Wizards, unfortunately. But the way he operates ball screens, the pace he plays at, the patience, him and Jalen Duren's chemistry, it's incredible. But here's the thing. You don't improve by 23 wins with roughly 20 games left to go by one player improving when you also lost one of your best players in Jaden Ivey. Malik Beasley has come in as a vet and is like one of the elite three-point shooters in the league this year. I don't know that people foresaw that, or he would have got a better contract and not been on the Pistons. Tobias Harris has come in and been a vet. Jalen Duren has shown growth. Asar Thompson is a really fun defensive player we'll figure out what the offense is. Isaiah Stewart, maybe one of the most underrated defensive players in the NBA because he comes off the bench. And then I will say this, if you look at Dennis Schroeder's just like box score numbers, you're going to be like, I will tell you this. He is doing exactly what the Detroit Pistons needed for them to continue to compete and win games in terms of controlling this team when Cade Cunningham is off the floor. And then shout out JB Bickerstaff for just doing an incredible job and improving just the structure, the foundation, everything about this team. I enjoy watching them. If nothing else, you can't deny that this is a competitive basketball team.
Yeah, two additional notes on that. The first thing that we haven't really mentioned is that Jaden Ivey was expected to be the second best player on the team this year, and he's missed 35 games at this point, probably, and doesn't look like he's going to come back. It feels like, right? I mean, you might have a better feel for that.
No, I don't. Listen, Amari doesn't tell me. Amari's a beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. He's my co-host over on the pod. He doesn't tell me things that he doesn't tell the public, but there's been nothing in the public that's like, hey, Jaden Ivey's back doing this or Jaden Ivey's back doing that. I would assume we're late enough in the season, Sam, that he's not going to play. It would be so hard to put him into the roster. Yeah, they just kind of have it figured out. I think they're going to condense this 10-man rotation, let alone if you try to put Ivy in there as well. So I just assume we don't see him.
So, I mean, that's your second best player out for the year, having only played 800 minutes, something like that this year, I would bet, 900 minutes, it looks like. So they've overcome that. The second guy I really want to stop for a second on that I've loved watching is Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah.
Isaiah Stewart, I would say, has been probably one of the 20-ish best defenders in the league this season. He's been massive for them, being able to stem the tide on defense, being able to continue to control games in any way, shape, or form on that end. Jalen Duren, over the course of the, most recent third of the season, so the, the 3/4 mark of the full season, has been better on defense. Better. I don't know that I would say he's a difference maker on that end or anything, but he's been much better on defense. But to me, it's Stewart. Stewart, only plays 20 minutes a night, but those 20 minutes are just savage minutes where he is physical. He rotates around like a madman. He is awesome as a big physical dude on the interior who just consistently controls what JB Bickerstaff needs in a backup center. So, I think he is their best center, frankly. And in the playoffs, which, by the way, this is the other thing we haven't mentioned, the Pistons are in the top 6. They are, look, I don't want to jinx this or anything.
This is why I hesitate. People make fun of me because I won't say it. I refuse to say it, and they don't understand. It's you don't understand what I've watched for 4 years. I know I should feel comfortable saying they're going to make the playoffs, and I still can't do it.
They are 5.5 games up on the 7 spot right now. They are tied for 4th currently in the conference. They are tied for 4th. They are closer to getting home court advantage in the playoffs than they are falling out of the top 6 and potentially missing the playoffs in the play-in tournament. They are 37-29. The number 7 seed is 31-34 and is without Jalen Johnson and, Orlando Magic, or without Jalen Suggs. The Pistons are going to make the playoffs, knock on wood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is by far, to me, the coolest story in basketball this year. And when they made their choices this summer, finally, under Trajan Langdon, to do what you and I talked about in terms of just like going to get shooting, going to get floor spacers, going to get guys that will make Cade Cunningham's life easy. I mean, that is what we've been waiting for. You and I have like long believed that Cade is a top 10 potential player in the league, and they just made life incredibly hard on him. And you had all these folks that like are advanced stats people that are just like, no, like he stinks. He's not very good. And it's just like, guys, I'm telling you, like he's super smart, knows how to navigate tight spaces. Like if you put, Dylan Harper in a spot like this early on in his NBA career where he didn't have any shooting, didn't have any secondary ball handling ability outside of another 20-year-old, it would look bad. If you put, any guy like this who is not enormous and is not, I guess like the craziest athlete in the world, it would just look very difficult for those guys. Now that he is shooting and now that he is spacing, it's a totally different world and it's a totally different ball game for him.
Can I also point this out as well, which in that breakdown, I broke down exactly what you talked about right there, where he's actually really good navigating tight spaces. And part of that's because he's a really good player, but part of that's because that's what he had to do for the first 3 years of his career. But what's crazy, Sam, this team is 22nd in three-point attempt rate and 15th in three-point percentage, and always has at least one non-shooter and almost always has two non-shooters because they start two non-shooters in Duren and Asar. They bring two non-shooters off the bench in Ron Holland. And quite frankly, as much as I love Isaiah Stewart, the one thing that hasn't kept up this season is
teams don't really guard him.
And he stopped shooting them in general. Like it just for the most, it hasn't been a priority. So my point is, it's not like he has, a floor spacing big with three, like you never have him on the floor with true floor spacing in that way. I mean, even Tobias, as good as he has been for them, is 34% on three. Simone Fontecchio, 32% from three. Now, the big ones are Tim Hardaway Jr. and Harris and Fontecchio still have gravity. But Hardaway Jr. is at 36 on 6 attempts. And listen, Malik Beasley has been incredible. 42% on over 9 attempts per game. Malik Beasley is the second leading scorer on the Detroit Pistons if you take out Jaden Ivey, and it's only 1 point behind Jaden Ivey. Like, he has been incredible. And I also want to say for Malik, I've listened to JB say it. His vibes, his energy is good for this team. And as somebody, again, that's watched this team for 5 years and watches other teams like bench and interactions and stuff, I don't know how important vibes are for NBA basketball, but they're good for this team. Beasley has his celebration. Everybody on the bench does it. Fontecchio has his celebration. Everybody on the bench does it. Sam, last night, Marcus Smart tried to go at Isaiah Stewart as he was walking off the bench. Guess who stepped in front of Marcus Smart? Rookie Ron Holland. Like this team, and Ron has that mentality. Like you like the Zach Edey, the Cam Spencers. Yeah. That is Ron Holland's mentality as well. They 100%. Back each other up. They talk some trash. They got some swagger. It's come back at him a couple times, which that's part of the game. But they have those vibes, that energy, whatever you want to call it, the chemistry. It is real for this team, and it's really cool to see. And shout out Trajan. Listen, shout out Tom Gores for making the tough decisions to eat 60. I mean, I know he has a lot of money, but still, eating $60 million of Monty Williams is eating $60 million. You bring in a new coach. JB's done a great job. Trajan for coming in. So far, the decisions he's made have been good. He's got bigger ones coming ahead. Those will be interesting. But across the board, I feel like people handled things the way they should, and now they've reaped the benefits on the court.
Yeah, just a couple of real quick questions here. Like, I've typically been a Malik Beasley skeptic, but it's not because of the shooting. It's because of the defense.
Sure.
And like this year, I think honestly, like he's been fine on that end. Like I would say a little below neutral. He plays really hard. He plays with energy, but he doesn't exactly stay in front of guys and stuff like maybe neutral for what he gives you offensively. It's fine. Like I can definitely handle it based off what he gives you. Yeah. And like a big thing for them in the playoffs is going to be like, okay, teams are going to attack him.
Yep.
How do we keep him on the court? Right? Like, how do we work to keep him on the court? And that will be an interesting situation. But this season definitely, helps in this respect for sure, in regard to like, hey, like if he's going to be like a serious 40% 3-point shooter on real volume, who is like not just a 3-point shooter, really, like, yeah, I know that like probably 75% of his shots are threes right now, but there is like a little bit more that he showcased, like attacking closeouts and like getting teams into rotation a little bit. I think it's been much, much better this year for Beasley.
I want to say real quick, I want people to understand, if you haven't, like, this is truly a historic shooting season for him. Like, everybody knows Malik Beasley's a good shooter. His per 100 possessions, he's taking 16 per 100 possessions. That is more than any point in his career. The 42%, best of his career. He's scoring 29 points per 100 possessions, best of any season. Like, it's truly historic for him. I'm not saying in general, but like, he is an elite floor spacer. I don't know that you would put him in that echelon before this season, but he is doing that in this particular year. And it's off transition. He has this real cool chemistry with Jalen Duren and DHOs. Isaiah Stewart lives to set an off-ball screen to get Malik Beasley an open look. Like, Isaiah Stewart lives for that. Like, he loves it. When Beasley broke the Pistons record, which was like 3 weeks ago, which is crazy. Shout out Sadiq Bey. Like, Stewart was celebrating. Like, Stewart forgot to play defense because he was so excited for Malik Beasley. So, like,
so good.
The chemistry between guys is really cool.
Yeah, I love it. I'm really excited to see them in the playoffs. Okay. Before we move on to the next team, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. We love PrizePicks here at Game Theory because of how easy they make it to get real money sports action. They put their members first, so all PrizePicks withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. If you think Stephen Curry is going to go off and have like 6 threes, now he's playing with Jimmy Butler. If you think Cade Cunningham is going to go for 10 assists next game while he's passing the ball to Malik Beasley, like we just talked about, you can make those picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code GameTheory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code GameTheory, GameTheory, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. A quick additional note here, by the way. Hit the subscribe button. If you're here watching the channel on YouTube, if you're watching Bryce and I live, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us grow the channel. Hit the like button while you're here. Go to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on the podcast feed, just hit the subscribe, hit the like button. Anything you can, the little things all really help. We appreciate everything you can do to help us continue to grow this thing out. We're really having a great time this year doing this thing. So please go hit that subscribe button. By the way, the next team I want to talk about is the Houston Rockets.
Okay.
Because the Houston Rockets, I expected them to take a leap this season. The Houston Rockets were a team that has drafted a lot of players recently, and they're all coming good in some respect, right? They're all starting to figure things out for the most part. We'll talk about that in a second as we talk about their playoff hopes. But I don't think anybody really expected them to necessarily end up in a spot where they are, in 5th place in the West. And for large swaths of this season, I mean, they were like 2nd in the West for probably half the year. It felt like 2nd or 3rd, at least, in the West for probably half the year. And they've fallen off just like a little bit recently. And frankly, if you made me bet right now, I think they probably finish 6th. I think Golden State's probably going to catch them. But again, for them to make the playoffs this year, not the play-in, the playoffs, is a massive, massive jump and a massive leap to me that just says so many good things about what Ime Udoka is doing. Says so many good things about all of the different athletes that they have accumulated in Houston, from Amen Thompson to Tari Eason to even like guys like Jabari Smith who have missed time, and Jalen Green. Obviously, Şengün has been fantastic. Whitmore has been up and down depending on the day, it feels like. And the crazy thing is about this Houston run, Fred VanVleet has not shot the ball well this year. Jalen Green continues to just be a roller coaster depending on the month. Like, I saw someone on Twitter say he's the king of the last X games stat.
Sure.
And that's right. I mean, he really is. Like, there are times where he's great for a stretch, and there are times where he's not very good for a stretch. I mean, Şengün is shooting under 50% from the field. Jabari Smith is shooting under 43% from the field. Tari Eason and Jabari have both only played 43 games.
Yep.
And still, we look up, and by the way, Fred VanVleet, who has missed, I think, 19 games. And if you would have told me that Fred VanVleet misses a quarter of the season and Reed Shepherd does not step up really into being like a backup point guard yet in the NBA, I would have said that they have no chance to go 500, frankly. Because I would have thought that in those games that Fred misses based off of last season, that they would have gone, like, given that he's missed 19, they would have gone like 3-16 in those games, in all honesty. And Fred is incredibly important to them. And I don't mean to separate him from the equation, but the fact that they have gotten such strong defensive infrastructure in place with Ime there is such an incredible, I think, tip of the cap to him, but also a tip of the cap to these young guys on this team that have just kind of figured out how to make it work.
That's what I was going to say. Yes, you give Ime credit, absolutely. But also you got to give credit to these players that they have. I mean, they've drafted guys with good defensive potential or made moves like the Dylan Brooks move. But Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, big time defensive players. Şengün, we've talked about like positionally getting in the right spots, really being good, solid on that end of the floor. I will say, like, it will be interesting to see how the next couple weeks go. It looks like Fred may be back tonight, actually, as they play the Suns, but Amen had the rolled ankle where he's going to be out for 10 to 14 days. That was a few days ago. But yeah, whenever you talk about a team this young being this good defensively, it's really impressive. And for me, it's right. Like, I think the playoffs will be fascinating for Houston, right? And it always is, right? For a team like this, you always get this data collection from the playoffs. But for them, it's, what do these guys look in the playoffs? What can Jalen Green do in the play? Because, man, Sam, I watch Jalen Green sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I know it can be frustrating, but he does some things explosively, athletically, even nuance with the way he makes his drives and the way he contorts his body. And then I'll even be like, okay, but can he make passes? And then he'll go on a stretch where he makes 3 or 4 really good passing reads. And then, as you mentioned earlier, then sometimes the second half doesn't go great, or there's a few game stretch or something like that. But this will be awesome to see. What does Şengün look like in the playoffs? Jalen Green. How do teams guard Amen Thompson in the playoffs? And how do they navigate that? Is he able to take advantage of it when they, don't guard him and those type of things? How does Tari look? So I'm with you that it's been an exciting season. I feel like we talk about the Rockets a lot, and I'm excited to see what this young group looks like in the playoffs. Hopefully Fred is healthy, Brooks is healthy, because those guys kind of keep it together where you're not just relying on the young core.
Yeah, so I just did quick math. Without Fred VanVleet this year, the Rockets are 10-9 somehow. Like, that is just such a testament to a team that's fighting. You have also brought up Amen here, and I brought up Amen a little bit earlier. Since entering the starting lineup for Amen Thompson, he's averaging 16 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.4 blocks, shooting 55% from the field and 69% from the line. He's only getting to the line 4.3 times. I think that's the number where, like, his game is going to explode moving forward. he's going to figure out like really how to get to the line and really how to like use his athleticism to stop start and like decelerate in addition to accelerating in the way that he does all the time. And he is going to be just like a monster to me. The leap for Amen this year has been by far the biggest reason for their success. Alperin has been great. Don't get me wrong. And Alperin, made the All-Star team, and I was all for that. You were all for that. He hasn't played drastically differently than what he did last year. Amen going from what he was last year to what he is this year, where he is, to me, very clearly the second best player in that draft class now. It's a massive jump. He looks like he's going to be a future All-Star moving forward.
Yeah, he's awesome. I may have had him on my short list as well, of just whenever we talk about players, because of what he's done this season. And, it's really interesting. I'm excited to go back and look at my pre-draft evaluation of him and his brother, just because it was like, it was a tough one for me, and kind of figuring out these guys that don't really shoot it really well, but you knew we were going to be 1% athletes, and he's come in and really figured it out. One thing I'm interested with this team in the playoffs too, Sam, is like, sometimes I feel like Dylan Brooks can get a little shot happy. Sometimes Jalen Green can get a little shot happy. I'm interested to see the hierarchy of this team in the playoffs. When who does the ball run through? Can Fred calm everybody down? Do guys take the right shots? Where does Jabari play into this? Like, I know I keep going back to this point, and I don't want to like overlook the fact that it's been an awesome regular season and an awesome run for them. I just continue to find myself, because I'm so intrigued by them, to see what it looks like on that stage and where guys and how guys settle into that stage.
Yeah. And, like speaking of Amen and Şengün, right? Like, I think people will look at it and be like, oh yeah, like their spacing is going to be totally screwed because neither of those guys can shoot, but they play really well off of each other, because Şengün is really good at playing out high. Amen really good at back cutting off of cutting off of Alperin's space really, really well. So I look at that and I see a way where this does work. To me, it's more, I don't really trust like Jalen Green as like a primary shot creator for them, because as much as like you can throw the ball into Alperin and try to play through that as a hub, I think it's pretty difficult to do that when he is not quite efficient enough as a scorer yet. He is a pretty good decision maker. It's more that if you can kind of just say, okay, we're going to play one-on-one, and we're going to have a massive body wall up against Alperin and try to just make him shoot over the top with those touch shots. I think that it can be really, really hard to play through that in the playoffs. Figuring out like how much they can get out of Jalen Green on a night-to-night basis. I mean, that honestly, like, Jalen Green is probably one of the most important players to his team in the playoffs this year, because he is going to end up having to take a ton of big shots. And I don't really know that it's like over a long stretch of time, I don't trust him to make them consistently. But if he goes on one of the hot runs that he does from time to time, they could surprise somebody. You know what I mean?
More importantly than making big shots, he's going to have to make big decisions, right? Like, it's going to be, two come at you. Are you willing to give it up? Can you make the right read out of two? Like, even if you are willing to pass it, do you make the right read out of it so it gets swing to Fred in the corner and he knocks down the shot? Or, whatever, you see a min cutting and you throw the lob as opposed to forcing up a mid-range floater or something that is highly contested. So that's what it's going to be for Jalen Green, because I think I'm with you. At least there's going to be stretches of, and that's what I say, like, what is the hierarchy of this team in the playoffs? Does Fred do it because he's the vet and they're in the playoffs? Do you give it to Alperin and Jalen and Amin because they're the young guys and you want to figure it out? Does Dylan Brooks decide he wants to do it for a couple games? Like, what is that going to look like? But I think it's really important data for them to get, because it is an ascending team, and these young guys, I think, are getting to a point where like they're ready, and then that data collection lets you know, okay, we can build around these three may need to move these one or two, and this is the type of player we need to bring in to complement all of them. And ultimately for the Rockets, that's what's most important at this point in their build to a contender.
Yeah, no, I think that's dead on. Okay. I think where I'm at with them is they are probably a first round exit this year, but even being a top 6 seed is a massive surprise and a massive like feather in their cap. And we'll see what they do in the offseason. Can they go out and get like a real primary number 1 option? But their defensive infrastructure and ability to like figure out a way to make the Şengün Amen spacing work and also get that growth from Amen this season. These are all just massive, enormous wins. Like Amen, I don't know. I think he's going to make an all NBA team. I'll say that. I don't know if he's going to be like the best number 1 option in the world or anything, but I think he can make an all NBA team being a number 2, as we've seen with guys like, Jaylen Brown and other players throughout recent history. Like the Cavs have a good shot to get 2 all NBA guys this year. I think Amen can be that guy who is that, tremendous piece all over the court. That's like a chess piece that helps you. If you need more ball handling, he can run point. If you need a backdoor cutter, he can play at the 4. If you need somebody to guard 4s, he can guard 4s. If you need somebody to guard at the point of attack, he can do that. Like he is really like almost going to be the preeminent chess piece player across the league here moving forward to me.
I would just say, because I don't know how much, if we're going to talk about any of these other teams, the way the Western Conference is seated right now would be amazing. I think a Rockets Grizzlies first round matchup would be awesome. Like I would sign up for that. Like that Rockets defense against that Grizzlies offense that we've talked about. And then the Warriors Lakers in the first round would just be incredible with how both of those teams have ascended since the trade deadline. So I would be all for those series. And I think Houston is going to be a tough out. Even I would probably guess like off the dome right now that I would guess they don't get out of the first round, but with that defense, and if Jalen Green gets on a heater or Şengün or something, they get the right matchup, they're going to be really tough for somebody and can absolutely win a series if they figure that offensive stuff out.
Okay. You are up with your second biggest surprise.
I'm going to say team-wise here, Sam, and then I'll see if you have another one or if we want to go players. I have to go Cleveland. Just to carry my own receipts of one of my preseason predictions was this team was going to have to trade one of the combinations either in the front court or the back court, and nothing has proven to be more incorrect than that. This team has been incredible all season long. I know there's all sorts of stats out there about like how many 15-game win streaks in one season. I think they've had 3 12-game win streaks in the season, like just incredible stuff. And I go back to, I've said it multiple times when talking about the Cavs, shout out Kenny Atkinson and shout out these players for accepting their roles. For Donovan Mitchell willing to take a step back and be an off the ball player when Darius Garland needs to play with the ball in his hands, and vice versa for Darius doing the exact same thing. For Evan Mobley growing his offensive game to attack closeouts, step out and get some catch and shoot threes, and the chemistry him and Jarrett Allen have on the offensive end. And then every one of those role players that they put on the floor, whether it's Ty Jerome, Max Strus, Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, like even Craig Porter Jr. comes in and played. Like I'm a Craig Porter Jr. fan. Like I love him in Cleveland, but I also would love him to get like more minutes somewhere. They just have guys that have accepted their role and they come in and they flourish in them, and they've exceeded my expectations. They've been a huge, huge surprise in terms of how good they've been. Like, it's not like I thought they were going to stink, but obviously I was worried about some things if I thought they were going to have to make a big trade at the deadline, and that's been the furthest from the truth. So maybe this is just a my own expectations thing.
I think that's probably true to an extent, but I don't think anybody saw this coming.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody saw 55-10 coming, where they would have to fall off of a cliff here to not be a 60-win team this year. I saw like 50-win potential here. Like I thought that this might be a 50-win team. They could get up to like 53, 54. They have 55 wins with 17 games left. Like they're going to win 65 games like pretty easily, it feels like here. Like if you look at their schedule that's remaining, I mean, like they have like a little bit of a road run. And I guess that their schedule is like semi-difficult left. But the thing is, like, it almost doesn't matter when you've won 15 straight games. Like, they are on a 15 game win streak right now. And I just can't help but look at the way that this worked out with the Pistons and the Cavs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Where the Cavs were kind of done with JB Bickerstaff at that point. Not to say he's a bad coach. He's not a bad coach, as we've learned this year in Detroit. Sometimes you just need a change, right? And what the Cavs needed particularly was not like the motivational things that JB provides, not the defensive infrastructure things that JB provides. They needed just a little bit more offensive creativity to figure out how to make the Evan Mobley, Jared Allen lineups work together. The way that Kenny Atkinson has been able to integrate like a lot of like really fun like movement principles into this offensive team, while also maintaining what makes them great with their guard play, with Darius Garland, with Donovan Mitchell. Like, if you watch the Grizzlies, right? The Grizzlies this year have integrated this really fun, spacing, principle, these fun spacing principles that I think often really help them, but end up also like creating an offense that isn't always super intentional in what it does. Like, they've run less ball screens this year, and now they're starting to like reintegrate ball screen attacks this year. I think Cleveland has found like a really good blend of doing what they do great while also maintaining like creative spacing and allowing these guys to be great. It's not always the easiest thing in the world, as I think like the Grizzlies are learning this year, and the Grizzlies have been really good. Like, they're sitting here as a top 4 seed, and they're looking like they're going to be tremendous, and they have a top 6 offense, right? But I think you and I like have some worries in the playoffs about how they go out and they create offense in half court settings consistently, because they also play at the second fastest pace and they figure out like how to make it work that way. The Cavs, by the way, they play a 2 big lineup, much like Memphis, and they have the 6th fastest pace in the NBA. Like, they get up and down like crazy and just continue to run the court, continue to figure things out. So it's the blend of everything that they do for me that really, really stands out. The second thing that stands out, look, we probably need to spend as much time as possible on Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and what those guys have done. I'm so glad you brought up the bench unit. They're the deepest team in the NBA this year. Like, it's just not even a question. You're bringing Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, DeAndre Hunter, like all these dudes off the bench. You were bringing Karis LeVert off the bench earlier this year.
And that's why, real quick, people were probably screaming. I didn't mention Hunter because he had been traded recently. I was trying to shout out the guys that had been there all year, but obviously DeAndre Hunter's like huge for them. So
100%. And what this does now, and what Hunter does now for them, in addition to Isaac Okoro, Max Strus, all of the guys they have, plus the 2 big arrangement that they have, it gives them all sorts of flexibility to solve problems depending on what teams present to them. Right now, on some level, they almost always are going to be small across the backcourt because Garland and Mitchell have to be in, and that's the weak point, and that's where teams are going to try and attack them. But the ability to go big and small in the front court as well, being able to go Okoro with DeAndre Hunter, with Evan Mobley, or you go one of those guys, Max Strus or Dean Wade with Mobley and Allen together. They have a lot of different ways to match up with you depending on the situation. And on top of that, their best is better than your best. If they can impose their will on you, it's really just Boston in the Eastern Conference. Like, if Boston can just get open threes constantly by driving and kicking, and that's how they impose their will when KP's on the court, like, that's probably the best that anybody can be, frankly, in the league, in all honesty. Because if it's just an avalanche from threes from Boston, nobody really has a shot, right? But with Cleveland, their ability to run out both big on defense and creative and shifty and small on offense, if they can impose their will on you in that way, it is frankly just like damn near impossible to stop them.
Yeah, and I mean, people talk about it all the time. They have this spurt ability that's really fun to watch, right? And
because they can get stops
yes.
and they can just like really go and destroy you on offense. Like it is a beautiful synergy to me watching them.
Yeah, I mean, they're the number 1 3-point percentage team in the league. So like I've heard Cavs people make the comparison to like the prime Warriors. Like I refuse to do that because I just have that team in a completely different realm. Maybe if the Cavs win a title, then we can start having those conversations. But the idea is right. And those Warriors teams were the same thing. You always knew at some point, and again, they were going to get stops. They had Iguodala in there, and then Steph and Clay and whoever were going to find buckets. And that's what this Cavs team can do. To your point, they get stops and they shoot it well. And their role players all shoot the ball. Like when you look through their 3-point percentage on Basketball Reference, it's truly unreal, Sam, because you get to like, oh, there's a 37% guy. What a bum. Oh, that's Sam Merrill, who you expect to make the shot every single time. It's just, and they move so well off the ball. They relocate, proper spacing with all of that. Again, I always have to mention the unselfishness, and I think they run some interesting stuff. I love watching the start of a game. They actually did it to the Pistons back-to-back games, and then another game after they played the Pistons, they run this nice set to get Evan Mobley a touch right in the middle of the lane to start the game. And I think it just probably is an idea of let's get Evan going, right? Darius is going to get his touches. Donovan's going to get his touches. But let's get Evan something that gets his aggressiveness on the offensive end. I love coaches that do stuff like that. As well as I feel like we give Darius and Donovan a lot of credit offensively, Sam, for their cohesion and chemistry. Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen deserve a lot as well. One non-floor spacer, and Mobley, who's like has gravity, but there's still like some prove it type stuff with him. He's shooting a very good percentage. I'm not saying he can't shoot, but their ability to cut off of each other, pass each other, move off of each other, never occupy the same space. And Jarrett's ability to play in the short roll and pass and floater finish and stuff is a huge part of this offense also.
Yeah. So two quick things before we move on from Cleveland. So first, I think that Jarrett Allen officially might be my most like underrated player in the league.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been saying this for a while, but the more I think about like the way that we craft all defense teams, Bryce, like, I don't know if we've mentioned Jarrett Allen all defense once this year, frankly. And I think that, I'll take the hit on that one because I tend to be the person that loves him. Like, I think we're just wrong for doing that. He's so good as a rim protector. He's so massive for them on the interior. He blocks one shot a game or whatever. And I think that's what kind of brings it down for people or whatever is that, he's just not blocking shots, but his ability to be versatile on the perimeter with his movement ability look like he's not like switching out onto guys all the time, but he can live out there in switch scenarios in addition to playing drop coverage where he has his arms extended out and he's terrific cutting off angles, in addition to rotating consistently across the lane. He is so good on that end of the court.
We just spend so much time debating Donovan versus Darius versus Evan. Like, I feel like he just gets lost. It's like, how many of these guys can you have in these conversations? And it's not fair to him. So this is why this particular episode is good, because we're just going to wax poetically about these teams and these players. And it allows us to set the stage of, let's just go all in on Jarrett Allen, because we're not trying to make an all NBA case or, necessarily an all defense case. We can just talk about an incredible impact that he makes for them.
Well, and I feel like what they do really well is they crash the offensive glass at a reasonable level. Like they're not, dominating the offensive glass by any stretch, but they get enough offensive rebounds while also maintaining structure in transition defense. They're really, really good at kind of, middling that ground a little bit. The second thing I just wanted to rip off. So like they played 661 minutes together, all four of them, right? Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen. They're a plus 10 in those minutes this year. Like it's just ridiculous. But here's the thing. They're a plus 10 with Garland and Allen when Mitchell and Mobley sit. They're a plus 13 with Mitchell and Mobley when Garland and Allen sit. Like that tends to be the two duos that they keep on the court together. But then, like, you look across, if they sit Evan Mobley, they're still a plus 6 in limited minutes there. If they sit Garland and Mobley together and have Mitchell and Allen on the court, they're a plus 19. If it's Garland, Mobley, Allen without Mitchell, it's plus 13. If it's, Garland and Mobley versus with Mitchell and Allen off the court, it's plus 19. Like you take Jared Allen off the court and play the three of them, Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley, it's a plus 17 right now this year. They just have this incredible synergy with all of their players now. The last thing I wanted to bring up, though, and this is a really, really critical thing. The number that I think I've looked at more than any this year in regard to draft prospects, in regard to, success league-wide, is, and in part it's because I'm trying to determine how important this is to consistent play, is actually turnovers, right? I'm trying to get a better handle on, okay, if you're a young guard, what's a high turnover rates mean? If you're a, older guy and you're still turning the ball over, what does that mean? Are we valuing turnovers enough in draft evaluation and player evaluation league wide? Well, what I can tell you, do you know who the top 3 teams are right now in the NBA in lowest turnover rate?
I mean, the Thunder and the Cavs are 2 of them, would be my guess.
Yep.
Boston, no.
Yeah, Boston's third.
Is it Boston? Okay.
The top 3 teams in the league right now in turnover rate are Oklahoma City 1, Boston 2, Cleveland 3. And then, by the way, Indiana's 4 here, and the Knicks are 6th. Like, don't turn the ball over. Like it's pretty, like it sounds simple on its face, right? But it is an important part of this.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would be interesting. And a part of that is, this is going to be kind of like, duh, I don't need to listen to a podcast to know this. You got to have good ball handlers to do that. And This team has a plethora between Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Ty Jerome comes off the bench whenever those guys may or may not be on. Like, they always have at least 2, Sam, if they want.
And good ball handlers, but also good decision makers. I think is the big thing.
I should have went, like, when I said ball handlers, I guess I was saying, like, as an encompassing, like, archetype, or like the guy that was running your offense, not just actual ball handlers. But yes, good decision makers that initiate your offense, run your offense. And to what we said earlier, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen growing in their roles doing those things is important as well, because you can handle those guys having a couple turnovers a game, being Mitchell and Garland, as long as Jarrett Allen is only turning it over once a game. If Jarrett Allen's turning it over 2 times a game, Mobley is at like 2, but like your role players not turning it over is also important. So I think that's really, really interesting. And again, you went through all those lineups. Those lineups all work, not because those stars can work together, but because they have the role players to fit in seamlessly, regardless of whether it's 2, 3, and what 2 or 3 other stars it is.
Yeah, and what that says to me in terms of low turnover rates for, high level for role players is role simplification, right? All these guys know exactly what they're doing at all times on the court, because I think that the Cavs have done a great job of simplifying things in terms of what they're supposed to do. Okay. Before we move on to the next team, shout out to our good friends over at NUTRAFOL. This year, there's nothing holding you back from loving your hair again. Hair is so much more than what you see on the surface. It's a reflection of what's happening inside. Let NUTRAFOL target the key root causes of your thinning hair and help you grow stronger, healthier strands from within. NUTRAFOL is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with NUTRAFOL. It is physician formulated. There are 100% drug-free ingredients. NUTRAFOL supports healthy hair growth from within. They target these key root causes of hair thinning, such as stress, hormones, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism. They use a whole body health idea in order to help target any sort of hair growth. Start your hair growth journey today with NUTRAFOL. For a limited time, NUTRAFOL is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to NUTRAFOL.com and enter the promo code GameTheory. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend NUTRAFOL for healthier hair. NUTRAFOL.com, spelled NUTRAFOL.com. Promo code Game Theory. That's NUTRAFOL.com. Promo code Game Theory. The team I wanted to go to next is a team we've actually found ourselves talking about quite a bit recently, but is still extremely surprising to me. This honestly might be the biggest surprise, because I just didn't see a pathway to this. The Blazers making this late season run that they have, where look, I get it that they've lost 5 out of 6 here, and they're on this really difficult road trip. For what it's worth, the 5 out of 6 they've lost in overtime on the road to the Cavs, on the road to the Celtics, on the road to the Thunder. They lost to the Pistons at home, and then on the road to the Warriors. By the way, they have the Knicks, I believe, tonight as well, at home. And then after that, though, it gets a little bit easier because they have the Raptors, Wizards, Grizzlies for a 3-game stretch where they might be able to get things a little bit back on track. And oh, by the way, they finish with a stretch of Atlanta, Toronto, Chicago, San Antonio, Utah before 2 home games against the Warriors and Lakers. So they might be able to really kind of settle this. But I guess where I'm at with the Blazers is this team I thought looked like a fairly big mess at one point this year, if I'm being honest. They were 13-28 on January 18th. So that was winning, less than a third of their games. And we sit here now, even after this little run, they were 27-33 at one point. Yeah, they're now 28-38. But just the defensive infrastructure they've built, the competitiveness that they have, I'm just really, really kind of impressed and surprised that they were able to kind of get on their feet a little bit here and build really off of 2 guys in Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia, who Denny was so far from a throw-in in a trade. He was the target, but that was a deal that, I don't know, kind of went under the radar a little bit on draft day last year, just because, it's the draft, and, when a good, solid starting caliber player gets traded, it doesn't feel like it's, the biggest news in the world, even though they traded him. They traded 2 first-round picks to get him. Those 2 guys on the wing, though, really kind of driving their success now. I've just really enjoyed watching it. And oh, by the way, I've loved watching the Scoot Henderson growth, the Shaedon Sharpe, roller coaster, depending on the night, where the defense is still a little bit of a mess, but they have so much infrastructure around him that they're able to make it work a decent amount of the time. Donovan Clingan has been pretty good since entering the starting lineup, I think. I just wrote about him for rookie rankings today. I just have enjoyed this group. It was a fairly big surprise to me that after they started 13-28, that they've been able to get up off the mat prior to the All-Star break and really build some momentum and build some, I was looking at this situation at one point this year and thought this might be one of the toughest situations in the NBA right now. And their run over the second half of the year has really changed my calculus in that regard.
Well, it's because a lot of it is driven by the youth that you are talking about, right? And that's why it's
Yeah.
exciting. And this is something we've talked a lot about with the Blazers recently is it's not this DeAndre Ayton resurgence or Jeremy Grant or something like that. Now, Anthony Simon's obviously getting plenty of buckets for them and really good at
Yeah.
it. But to me, even that is good, right? Like, you're getting into the last year of Ayton after this year, so he's at least an expiring, figure out what to do there. They have to make a decision on Simons, whether he's a part of this or not. I mean, when you talk about young players, it's not like he's that much older, which kind of funny. Ayton
But
is
he's expensive though.
yeah. And, Jeremy Grant's the one kind of like, what do we do with this? They're going to have to figure out. But maybe you just keep him around as a vet at this point and just deal with it. But all of the people you talked about, I saw someone tweeted out the other day. I think they tweeted at us maybe. Scoot, Shaden Sharp, Denny, Tumani, Donovan Clingan. Sign me up for 48 minutes of that for the rest of the season, and I would watch because that would be a blast to watch that because Denny has been really good, always been a fan there. Everybody knows that, like, I'm sure I'm a Tumani Kamara stan at this point. I don't have very many agendas I push.
But by the way, Bryce, on Tumani, are you aware of like the growth that's happened offensively there over the last little while?
100%. Like the shooting isn't bad. I mean, he's at 36% on 4 attempts. He can attack out of the corner. He offensive rebounds the heck out of the basketball. And he threw some, he actually struggled to finish at the rim the most recent game I watched when he played the Pistons, but he had some really nice passes and he was throwing them with his right hand, which is his weak hand, quote unquote, weak hand, offhand, whatever. I was just like, there's an offensive game that you may start calling this guy a two-way wing, not just like an all defensive wing, like maybe more than a 3-and-D wing, like a true two-way guy. I'm not saying he's like going to be a 20-point-a-game guy, but he's not going to be a negative on the offensive end. There's a chance he's not a negative on the offensive end.
Yeah, so like for the last, like the third quarter of the season, right? Like we're moving into the fourth quarter right now. For the third quarter of the season here, Tumani Kamara over his last 23 games, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.8 blocks, shooting 50, 42, 77. Like, Tumani Kamara is like definitely going to make our all defense teams, assuming that he hits. I think he's like a couple games short of the game requirement right now. Assuming he hits the
one game, he has to play one more game. He's at 64.
Yeah, he is definitely an all defense guy to me this year, but like you said, it is very similar to the Herb Jones situation last year, where Herb has really started to take a bit of a leap on offense as well and can make shots and can drive a little bit. But I really, really think that he is about to be like one of the most valuable like players for his contract in the NBA. And I don't know what we'll do about him we tend not to include rookie scale deal guys in the best contract rankings, but I mean, he's still got like 2 years left. He'll probably only end up with 1 year left on this deal. I'm realizing because they'll probably extend him. They can extend him this summer if they want to, frankly. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what they do there. And then Denny with him is just a downhill force. Like that guy's like the strength, like he just brushes dudes off with his shoulders. Like guys go flying whenever he makes contact with them, which says a lot to me. Like, I don't know what Denny's listed at in terms of weight. Like, I think it's probably pretty wrong, whatever it's listed at, frankly. Yeah, Denny is listed at 210 right now. There is no way that dude's under 235. Like, he is a physical beast who just like bumps dudes, and you can't be 210 pounds and send dudes flying like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but he maintains the athleticism too and the like speed. So man, he's been awesome this year too.
Yeah, and he went on a stretch of just getting a ton of free throw attempts because of that, because he can play through that contact and he draws it. And so I think it's an interesting defensive infrastructure, like you said, with, if you have an all NBA level wing perimeter defender in Tumani, who's very versatile, and then you put Donovan Clingan behind him for 30 minutes at some point in his career. I think Scoot has I've always felt like Scoot had the potential to be a neutral defender just with his size and his wingspan and all of that. Then he's not a bad defender at all. Shaedon is the guy you would target in that particular group of 5. But
yeah,
I've been really interested with him on the offensive end. The talent is undeniable with Shaedon Sharpe. We talk about athletes all the time in terms of Amin Thompson, Nassar Thompson, Ja, Anthony Edwards. Shaedon Sharpe is a silly athlete in a league of silly athletes. And so, and he shows it. And my question with Shaedon is like, I almost feel like he's way more comfortable playing on ball than off the ball. Like, I feel like he turns down catch and shoot opportunities sometimes. But if he can figure that out, get a little more comfortable there, it's just a really interesting young group of players for the Blazers. And like you said, they've won some games. And because of that, we kind of took notice, and it's fun. It definitely wasn't a team I expected to want to watch a bunch of games of and kind of be fascinated with some of their young core of players. And that is how it's turned out.
Yep. Real quick note, you mentioned Denny just like living at the foul line.
Yeah.
Over his last 22
What are the
games,
numbers?
6.3 free throw attempts per game, which is ridiculous. Anthony Simons as well, like worth noting, played the last 24 games for the Blazers, 22 points, 4.7 assists versus only 1.8 turnovers, shooting 45, 39, 90 during that window, taking 9 3-point attempts per game. Again, they're going to have to make a decision on Simons this summer. I don't know what that decision is going to be necessarily. Honestly, if I was them, I would probably move him because I don't know that like spending a ton of money on him when you're about to get potentially quite flexible is the right call. And I think they would get a real, like Orlando should give up something for Anthony Simons. Like he's a real player, and Orlando has 2 first-round picks this year. Like if you're, Portland and you can get one of those first-round picks and, maybe something else that you like for Simons. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a win to me. I've talked about Scoot recently on the show. Like I don't need to do that again, but his jump recently has been really fun. The thing that look, the Blazers are not the best team in the NBA. Like they're not, some, team that's going to make the playoffs. Although the play-in race in the West is getting, closer and closer by the day as the Suns continue to struggle and the Dallas Mavericks sit in that 10th spot.
I thought Portland was going to make a play on it. They're 5 back right now. When Dallas really got beat up, I was like, Portland is going to sneak into this thing. And then
I kind of thought so too.
They went through this stretch, and now we're getting to few enough games where 5 games seems like quite a bit, Sam, even for a Mavericks team that is going through what they're going through, but a Portland team that has some of these tough games. I don't know if they can get there or not.
I think that's probably right. They're 5 games back. The schedule's not wildly easy, but I will say that like Phoenix still has a bear of a schedule. Dallas is just missing everybody. So like Dallas probably won't make it. Like it's a really, really interesting spot to me.
My
for
guy,
them.
Najee Marshall getting a lot of on-ball reps there in Dallas, letting him cook.
He really is. Okay, Bryce, you're up.
So can we go players? Because I don't have another team.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go players.
Okay. I want to go Dyson Daniels. I think, listen, Dyson Daniels, all of the individual stats, the disruption, the deflections, the steals, everybody knows defensively. I hope like people haven't like thought, I hope I haven't got like a hater, type of label with him, with where I've had him in like all defense stuff. Like I think he's a big time, definitely all defensive player. I know some people like want to make defensive player of the year arguments for him. I'm not in that category, but when you talk about, it's kind of like the Tumani thing with me. I've mentioned this a couple times. Yes, the defense is awesome. It's extremely disruptive, all of that. I've kind of liked his offense. I think he does really interesting things on the offensive end in terms of his cutting. He had to play with the ball in the hand the other day in a game I watched because Trey wasn't playing. That was a little bit too much of a role for him being the primary guy, but you can watch it and go, man, when he's the secondary creator on the floor next to Trey, this works perfectly. He has the little floater. I just find myself watching the Hawks play and really loving what Dyson Daniels is doing. And it's not just defensively, Sam. I like a lot of what he's bringing on the offensive end as well. And what seems to me like true growth on that end of the floor.
Yeah. I mean, the growth on the offensive end is drastic. Like Anybody that watched a lot of Pelicans basketball last year would tell you that he's like a top 10 defender on the perimeter in the NBA, right? He has always been awesome on that end. It's just that the offense was actually holding him back from getting on the court and allowing him to weaponize his defense. Taking the leap on offense is what's allowed the defense to thrive. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, he is a real offensive player. Like, here's the thing, like, he grew up playing point guard. He has those skills. Like, he's always been like a pretty good passer. I feel like that's the thing that, like, we haven't even really seen a ton of yet is like the ball screen passing ability that I do think is within there. Like, he's averaging 4.2 assists versus 1.9 turnovers per game. Like, it's not like he's a bad passer or anything, but like, I think he even has a little bit more than that as a passer. The vision is like pretty good. Like, there are flashes where it's like, oh wow, like, you know, you mentioned were you talking about the Philly game recently that he played? Like, he had 25, 6, and 9 in that game.
It was the Philly game where, I wanted to watch it because I was like, okay, I need to watch some Philadelphia 70s. I need to see what Quentin Grimes is doing. Jared Butler, Lonnie Walker played in that game. So I was like, all right, I'll turn this one on. I didn't realize Trey didn't play till after I turned it on. So it ended up being a really fun Dyson Daniels and Zach Risache game to watch and analyze, because those guys' offensive roles were also, George Niang is just living his best life there in Atlanta, taking a ridiculous amount of catch and shoot threes, and I love it. So
and look, like, this is another thing too, and like, no shots necessarily. I mean, like, maybe some shots at Willie Green a little bit, but like, an offensive scheme that makes sense is a huge part of making these guys that are young, that aren't like superstar players, comfortable in their role offensively. Like, Dyson Daniels, it felt like, never found a role to get comfortable within as like a secondary ball handler in New Orleans. And part of that's like, look, like, the shooting around him was always somewhat questionable, right? You know, they typically like to play a big with Zion, who's also not a shooter. And then, you know, you have, you know, different guys out there who, like Herb Jones, doesn't always get guarded as a shooter necessarily. So I do understand like the limitations of that roster to some extent, but on the flip side of that, you look at Atlanta, where they play this, just the way that they're building their roster is really smart. Like, they have a lot of guys who can dribble, pass, shoot on the perimeter, but more than anything, like, they're long and defensively minded around Trey to be able to try and make that end work pretty well. What I really like is, like, Dyson, it feels like, just has more space to cut into. He has more, you know, opportunities as a second side ball handler next to Trey to potentially attack closeouts and drive. He's really big. Like, he's really long. He's 6'7", 6'8", like, with a 6'11" wingspan. He can get to his spots. Like, he is a really, really impressive player that I think will continue to have that ability to play well off of Trey Young, or play off of like any sort of primary creator long term. I was talking about this with somebody last night, just being here in Australia. You know, he's extension eligible this summer. He's going to make like serious money. Like, he should be like, if you told me, I mean, if I'm him, right?
What did Jalen Suggs just get?
That's literally the name I was going to bring up.
Okay, because
170 or so, 150 is what he got. Like, I think that's the number for Dyson. Like, if I'm like Dan Moldovan, who is Dyson's agent, I'm literally walking into Atlanta and going, Jalen Suggs just signed down the road in Orlando for 150. That's what I want.
I mean, yeah, because Dyson Daniels is 21 years old.
Yep.
This would be a fun conversation, but he can try to make the argument he's a better defender, more impactful defender than Jalen Suggs. I think that depends on what you prioritize.
Yeah.
I tend to go with the point of attack, physical, I'm going to sit down and guard you a little bit more than the disruptor, but still, Daniels is going to make all defense this year, lead the NBA by a wide margin in steals and deflections. I think even I could put an argument that more impactful defensively. And how much different is the offense, quite honestly? Like, Dyson sneaky stat here, shoots 41% on corner threes for his career, Sam. And that's only gone up every year in the NBA. 36 to 41 to 44 this year. Now that's just corner threes, but again, in kind of his role, those are the ones that are kind of the most important, along with how he's finished floaters and stuff like that. Yeah, if I'm him and I'm his agent, that's what I'm going to and saying, why do I not deserve what that guy got?
So, couple of just things there. Like Jalen Suggs is a better ball handler in my opinion. Not, I don't even know that I'd say he has better feel in ball screens, but I think he's just a more explosive athlete and has the ability to like kind of get to his spots a little bit easier than Dyson. I do trust Jalen more as a shooter than Dyson. I know what the, numbers say this year that Dyson's at like 36 in total and Jalen I think is at like 31, 32 this year. Like Jalen just looks more confident and comfortable as a shooter. I think he gets guarded more, right?
Sure.
So, but I do think that Dyson is a better defender than Jalen Suggs, just because of the ability to like consistently translate defense to offense. Like that is a serious factor for Dyson. The way that he transitions defense to offense is like a serious, enormous part of this in terms of getting Atlanta easier offense without Trae Young having to create everything. So there are pluses and minuses to both players. That's the comp though, to me, is like, if I'm, Dyson's agent, I'm going in and just being like, I am like Dyson is a $30 million player, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, Suggs, just looking at the 3-point volume, like that's where the big thing is. But yeah, I think it's an interesting name, and Dyson, again, like that's why I wanted to talk about him, because when we end up talking the Hawks, it's a lot of Trae Young, it's Reese, whatever. We mentioned Daniels. It's always the defense. And I'm like, I want to talk a little bit about his offense, because ultimately when we're talking big picture, like the idea behind this episode, surprises. Okay, if you told me he led the league in steals, okay, fine. But if you told me he did it while shooting 35% from three, almost 50% from the field, the assists, the rebounds, the cutting, all of that, that's what I love whenever I watch the Hawks play.
Okay. So the last guy I'll bring up is, and I'll give you the floor a little bit at the end here, because I'm sure you have a couple other guys. Trey Murphy's leap offensively this year has been really fun. And I've done a video on Trey Murphy. Like, you can go to the YouTube channel and find that. I think I've done a video on Dyson too, honestly. You can go back and find that from earlier in the year. But we're now working on like a half season sample of Trey Murphy averaging 23 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists with a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio, shooting 47, 38, 88, where particularly where the skill improvement has come is in the comfort and ability to handle the ball, right? Like, he looks very comfortable in ball screens now. He looks incredibly comfortable getting somebody on his hip and being able to like keep that guy like as a hostage on his hip in jail and then get to his spots consistently. He's just a big dude. Like, if you ever would have told me that Jalen or Trey Murphy handled the ball like this and like was a real creator, that's just not something I saw, to be honest with you. It just isn't. So like at Virginia, at Rice, wherever he was more of just like a pure 3-and-D guy. And the idea was, oh yeah, like this is going to be one of the best like 3-point shooters in the league because he has a super high release point at 6'9", and he's going to be able to score that way and like impact the game that way. Honestly, the defense has maybe been a little bit worse than what I expected coming into the league, but it does not matter in any way, shape, or form, because he is growing like game by game. It feels like night by night in his ability to create and play in ball screens and handle the ball and score. His ability to get to his spots inside the 3-point line is just so remarkable and impressive.
I mean, he was on my list. He was a name on my list because you're right. I mean, and I'll be honest, I was a little bit late to the party. I had Pelicans fans like, you need to go watch this, like the way he can score and you're too low on him and stuff. And I think what you outlined there is what it was. I knew he could shoot and he can shoot it from deep. And that jump shot is pure. Like, it looks good, but it's the drives and it's the versatility of his scoring package, Sam. He has, he's able to, you talked about it. Like, I have notes as well. He has this ball screen rep. He snakes to the middle lane, hits a floater. He gets to the rim. His like rim on Synergy, his 0 to 3 feet numbers on B-ball reference, all of them are good. Like, it's true 3-level scoring potential. And it's crazy. Like, he's very controlled with the way he does it. He has this length, which then whenever he goes to his Euro step, he can work through and around defenders. Just a nuance that I definitely had not seen or expected to see until I started watching this year. And then he has this size that allows him to shoot over defenders that some players just don't have and aren't able to. So
Yep.
I don't know what the ceiling is here. I don't want to put one on him as we've seen him grow into this role. I've made some notes like, okay, is this a true number 1 scoring option, or does it cap out as a number 2 or whatever? If I'm the Pelicans, I'm figuring it out. Like, I'm continuing to give him the ball to see where it can go. I do think what will be interesting with him is the decision-making that we always talk about with these type of players. When they start putting 2 on you, can you make the decision? Whenever they start running the secondary defender, when they start packing the lane when you drive and respecting all of that. But for right now, this has been a blast to watch him shoot. And with the distance in which he can make threes, that's tough to guard him. When you have that kind of shooting gravity, I've always said this, the best first step is a big time jump shot, because if a defender has to close out to you and respect the shot fake and respect the jumper, that gives you an advantage as he closes out to you. And Murphy absolutely has that, and then has added all this other nuance to his scoring.
Yeah, I think that's all absolutely right. Trey has been a really, really fun surprise for me. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, I don't know that we need to go too far deeper into this, right?
I'll throw a few other names. Like, we talked about Ty Jerome. Like, if we just said only
Totally.
players, Ty Jerome would have been a player for me. I will say this, and listen, like, this isn't a like game theory, like stream YouTube, like channel thing. I think Jalen Wells is like this guy as a rookie.
Massive surprise.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about where he was drafted and where he's going to end up starting all of these games for the Grizzlies, he's going to at least be first team all rookie, if potentially rookie of the year. I thought that was sure. I don't even want to like debate right now. Is it Steph Castle, whoever? Steph Castle was a top 5 pick. So the fact that he's potential rookie of the year isn't a surprise to me. What he's doing isn't a surprise to me. If we're talking about surprises, Jalen Wells was not high on my board. Obviously wasn't super high on a lot of NBA teams' boards based on where he got drafted, and him doing what he's doing for the Grizzlies is huge. And then I also did just have the Thompson twins. We talked about both of them when we talked about the Pistons and the Rockets, but the ascension that both have taken have been surprises for me. And so, like, again, if we just would have went players, I kind of probably would have put them together a little bit and put those 2 guys.
I think Asar, particularly for me, like growing on offense in the way that he has, is like a little bit of a surprise to me, like in a really positive way. The way that they're utilizing him a little bit more on the ball has been interesting to watch. Like if you're a Lakers fan, I'm sure you're sitting here saying, hey, Luka Doncic is a good surprise for us. that fell into our lap, but I don't think we need to keep taking shots at Dallas Mavericks.
That's the biggest surprise. When you say best, now that depends on the fan base that you're a part of. So
I think that's probably right. I think that's all we got here. Speaking of the Lakers, tomorrow on the channel, I'll be talking to Jovan Bua, I believe. We'll talk about the Lakers. We'll talk about everything that's going on with Los Angeles right now. Really, really fun team. Really, really, interesting team now that I think is a semi-real contender. I'm really fascinated to try and, figure out with Jovan, like, okay, what is this team doing beyond just like playing really hard on defense and now having like two of the best creators in the world once LeBron gets back from injury here, and how much does the LeBron injury change things here for them moving forward. I think that's all we got on my end. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, LeBron's not going to be there on Friday. Me and Chris had seats real close to the Lakers bench. And I told Chris, I was like, listen, like with where our seats ended up, LeBron's probably going to be right there since he's not playing, but whatever. And then looks like he's went back to LA. Shams just reported. So, but again, if you were at the Nuggets Lakers game on Friday, say what's up. Otherwise, follow on Motor City Hoops for Twitter and Blue Sky, the Motor City Hoops Substack. You want to follow some Piston stuff. I have notes. I have video breakdowns, all sorts of stuff like that, especially if your team plays Detroit. Have notes on your favorite team after that game. Pistons Pulse is going live tonight if you want to listen to what players have exceeded the expectations the most for the Detroit Pistons. That'll be a fun episode. Otherwise, Game Theory Podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. I just published rookie rankings over there. I wrote about Steph Castle, who I think is playing better than any rookie in the league right now. And I think that if, eventually I will do a redraft over at The Athletic for this year, like I do every year. And I think Castle would probably be number one for me in a redraft, even if I would still have Wells as rookie of the year as of right now, with a real openness to changing that by the end of the year, depending on how Castle plays. I think I wrote about Klingon and wrote about Khalil Ware as well. What else? I mean, Bryce, the meeting I had to do here before we got on, I had to do a meeting about like transfer portal stuff.
No. Nah. Ridiculous. Unreal stuff.
That's where we're at. We're at the point of portal season, and that's concerning to me as it is for everyone probably.
Yeah.
So that'll be a thing. The draft guide is continuing to get written, through 30-ish names now, which is nice. I've written all of the big guys now except for I think Jace and Asen Newell, who are kind of like next up on the list at this point for me. But like all the other like lottery guys I've written at this point, which is exciting. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of run through this year, and we're going to keep doing draft coverage here. I'll probably figure out a game plan for us next week moving forward, and keep it locked here at the channel. Go watch the Jalen Wells breakdown I did. I did a big, interview with Jalen Wells where we talked for 45 minutes about his tape this year, his journey to the game, everything like that. Just a really, really fun basketball player and a really, really fun player to break down tape with at the end of the day. Really sharp dude. You can see immediately how he's been able to adjust to the NBA and has been so successful early on. Just clearly has like an analytical mindset in terms of the way that he thinks about problem solving in the NBA. So yeah, absolutely. Go watch that video. Go hit the subscribe button over on the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button over on the podcast feeds. Anything you can do to support this channel, we really, really appreciate it as much as anything. And until next time, we'll talk soon.